guys are going to love this assignment because it takes some reading, takes some thinking. And take it back. You guys are probably going to hate this assignment. But let's go through it. So Marcelina uses a blend of white corn and yellow corn to make tortilla chips at her house. She needs to buy 50 kilograms of corn. So total, she needs 50 kilograms. White corn costs 30 cents per kilogram. Yellow corn costs 15 cents per kilogram. And she wants to spend a total of $12. Now, I want to let you realize there's no restriction on how much of each corn she needs to buy. That's where I was confused. So it's not like she needs exactly this amount of yellow corn and this amount of white corn. Otherwise, we're kind of stuck, being, figuring out exactly where we need to be. But this is a little more general. It doesn't matter as long as she buys a total of 50 kilograms of corn. So you could be thinking, why not just buy all yellow corn in that case? Because it's cheaper. And that's exactly it, You could, because it would be cheaper. And that's what she does here. So here's a graph that represents the system. So realize what these two different lines represent. This one's talking about the cost, because 30 cents for the white corn plus 15 cents for the yellow corn is a total of $12. That's talking all about the money there. Right here, x plus y is 50. This is the total amount of corn. So guess what? If our point was ever below that blue line, since the blue line is the total amount of corn, if we had a point below it, that would mean we bought less than the intended amount of corn. But if we have a point above it, that means we bought more than the intended amount of corn. And if we have a point on the line, that's exactly the amount of corn we intended to buy. So with this point C, this means that we have more than the corn we need. Well, how did she pull that off? Because she bought more yellow corn because it's cheaper. So, because we're right on the green line, if we were under the green line, it means we spent less than what we wanted to spend. Since green represents the cost, we spent less if we're underneath it. If we're above the green line, we spent more. So since we're right on the green line, we spent it exactly what we wanted to. So she spent the intended amount. These are the two that say that. And buys the intended amount of corn? No, she actually bought more corn than she needed by spending the intended amount. This we call, and if you guys are in econ, we call that like the equilibrium, right? That middle spot, that happy ground, where she bought the exact amount of corn she needed for the exact amount of money she brought, if it was that point. Casper has some whipping cream that is 18% butterfat and milk that's 4% butterfat. He wants to make a 500 milliliter mixture of them that is 12% butterfat. So he wants a total of 12% butterfat. The graph shows the system of equations for this scenario where X is the volume of whipping cream he uses and Y is the volume of milk he uses. So X plus Y, this is the total milk. Total amount of milk, or not total amount, total volume. So he wants to be right at 500. So as long as you're right on that blue line, you're right at 500. If you're below the blue line, you're less than the total volume. If you're above it, you're above that volume. This right here is the mixture. This represents the percent of butterfat. So as long as if we're below the line, we would have less than the intended butterfat. If we're above it, which in this case we are. Look, we're above that line. If you draw a vertical line through that point is above that graph here that represents the butterfat. So we have the right volume, but too much butterfat. So the mixture has more than the intended volume. No, we have the intended volume because we're right on that blue line. The mixture has the intended volume and has the intended butterfat. Now that'd be right there if our point was right here, but it's not. The mixture has the intended volume and has more than the intended butterfat. That's what we would answer. The mixture has less than the intended volume and has more than the intended butterfat. No, that would be if we're above the butterfat. We somehow have more butterfat, but then we would have less volume, which could happen. I think, let me see, not sure where that point would go. But for us, we're right on the right volume, but we're above that butterfat line. And that's pretty much the idea of this assignment. I think there's another one just like this. Oh, this point K, that's right on the money. That means we're right where we're intended for both.